Well, happy Mother's Day to all you moms. We really appreciate you guys. We're glad you're here with us this morning here at Lee Summit Community Church. So as Kevin said last week, or last 2 weeks really, we were getting into this Old Testament book, a prophet by the name of Jonah. Last week we were in chapter 1, and here's kind of what we said last week with chapter 1 if you happen to miss last Sunday with us. Last week we told the greatest fish story ever told. God says to Jonah, go to Nineveh. Nineveh is full of Assyrians who are wicked and evil, gruesome killing machines. They were terrible people. And Jonah, a prophet of God, had absolutely no interest in doing what God had to say. So God says, go east, and Jonah says, I'm going to go west, young man. And he heads 2,500 miles in the opposite direction, trying to find himself to the coast of Spain. Anything to get away from Nineveh. Now, God always responds to his people when they move in a certain direction, and so God responds in a way that does not necessarily feel overly gracious to us, but he casts a huge storm onto the sea, threatens to break apart the ship that Jonah has found himself on with a bunch of sailors. These sailors are not followers of God. They have a bunch of false gods that they are pursuing in their life. And every single one of them begins to pray, make sacrifices, do whatever they can to get their God to hear them. The one person on the boat not praying is the prophet, the one guy who actually knows God. And last week we said that this tells us a lot about Jonah. Jonah is what we would call an ambivalent disciple. He claims to worship God, but he's not doing what he's supposed to. He claims to follow God, but he's disobeying. He claims to know God, but he's he's ambivalent. He's not really doing the thing that he is supposed to be doing. So while all the other sailors are praying, trying to save their lives in this moment, Jonah is the one not praying, and that made me kind of question a little bit. I wonder why he doesn't pray. I think part of it is just strictly because he doesn't want for God to hear him. He doesn't want to hear God. He just straight up does not want to do the thing God has asked him to do. Otherwise, he would not be doing what he is doing. So there's just this straight up lack of even wanting to interact with God at this point in Jonah's life. But maybe there were some other reasons involved in this as well. I know that in times in my life when I have been in particular seasons where I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I am far more likely to not be interested in what God has to say because I'm trying to do what I want to do. And Jonah is in a season of disobedience, doing what he wants to do, and so his thought process is probably something like, God doesn't really want to hear from me right now anyway because I'm currently disobeying. Or maybe for you sometimes, and maybe even for Jonah in some cases, but maybe for you sometimes prayer has felt like talking to a wall. Why pray anyway? Because it's just like talking to a wall. There's no response, nothing happens. So I just don't think I'm going to pray because it's like talking to a brick wall. Reminds me of an old story of a reporter who was sent into the city of Jerusalem to write a story there, and this reporter was watching Jewish people go to the Wailing Wall, the Weeping Wall, where they would go and they would pray, and he began to follow this one particular gentleman for a long period of time. Day after day, this person came to the same spot on the wall and they would pray hour after hour. And eventually it got the reporter's attention enough that he went up to this man and he said, tell me, what is it? You've been coming here day after day, hour after hour. What is it that you're praying? He responds, I'm praying for world peace, the eradication of illness. I'm praying for good things. I'm praying for God to make all things new like this. These are my prayers. And the reporter says, well, how long have you been praying this particular prayer? And this man at the wall says, I've been praying this for over 40 years. And the reporter says, what must it feel like to pray the same prayer every day, hour after hour, for over 40 years? And the man said, well, sometimes it feels like I'm talking to a wall. Isn't that why we don't pray sometimes? Because it's just like, I don't know. I don't know that there's going to be a response, and I don't even know if I want to hear the response. And that's partly where Jonah is, and maybe that's where you are. God doesn't want to hear from me anyway, and I don't really know if it's going to do any good. And so Jonah is a prayerless prophet. Jonah ends up at the end of chapter 1, he gets tossed overboard, and God appoints a great fish to come and swallow Jonah out of the depths of the sea. And that's where we pick up the story in Jonah chapter 2. And the question for us in Jonah chapter 2 is this: when you are in the stinky grace, when you are in the belly of the fish and things cannot seem to get any worse for you, how do you pray? How do you pray from the belly of the fish? Now, before we dive into chapter 2, we're going to pray and just ask God to speak to us in our time. So let's pray together.